Hey there, welcome to the channel. I'm Ben, and it's finally starting to look a little bit like spring here in Wisconsin, so today we're going to get back to work on my Suzuki DR650 Adventure Build. And if you guys have seen the other build series videos on this bike, these parts might look familiar. And for those of you who are not familiar with the channel, the build, and these parts, this is essentially just a cheap windshield slash GPS bar that I bought off of Amazon last spring, and I was really pretty happy with it. I definitely like the idea of it, but the reason that I bought this super dark color screen here is that initially I thought I would be able to mount it somewhere down here where it's basically completely out of the line of sight of anybody that's on the bike, and really even for me where it did end up getting mounted, which was again much higher than I thought it would be, it worked okay because I'm always sort of sitting upright enough that I can totally see right over this. And if you guys watch any of the videos, especially when my dad's on this bike, it looks as if this is basically right in our way, but you have to keep in mind that where our eyes are and where your eyes are, the camera is way down on our chins, so it makes a pretty huge difference, and this was never actually blocking our view, other than I suppose when we would get off the road in some really gnarly trails and would need to see what's directly in front of our front tire. I had a couple of you guys asking if the Hemisphere off-road rally fairing that I've got on the XR650L here was also an issue, and I don't personally feel like it is for a couple reasons. One, it's not a windshield, meaning it's not something you're supposed to be able to look through, and two, it is definitely substantially lower than what the screen was when it was on the DR650. So the rally fairing is going to stay on the Honda XR650L, but since a windshield is technically something that you should be able to look through, then, well, I figure we should have something on here that you can safely look through. And I'm definitely going to need a windshield and a GPS or CarPlay unit like I've got attached to the GPS bar here on my adventure rides up north, especially in the springtime when it's a little bit chilly here in Wisconsin. So this is going to get mounted back on here. In the lowest position, there are a few different options here. I guess infinite possibilities that you can kind of raise and lower it in these brackets. We're going to put that all the way down to the bottom. And if you guys are interested in this, it's a CarPride W702 Pro. I've got reviews on both this and the standard model that I've got on the XR. I can put a link for those down in the description, but the one thing that I do want to mention about this and this kit is that I did have to mount the 7/8 brackets that they sent me on top of the stock bar mount clamps here. So that's why we've got basically just a hole for a 7/8 bar here. And then I've got my Rocks offset risers up here that convert the 7/8 bars to the 1 1/8 chub bar, and this is the KTM bend. And somebody mentioned that because I'm now going through these risers through the top of this clamp and into the stock, well, bottom portion of the clamp, that this is a lot of extra mechanical advantage here. But the thing is, this fastener is actually only, well, maybe an 1/8 of an inch or a 1/16 of an inch spaced off of the top of this bracket. They would not recess into here. And I did have to sort of custom make a fastener that would fit almost all the way down to what is a dead end in the bottom of the clamps here to make this work. And of course, there is just going to be some extra mechanical advantage anytime you put any type of bar riser on a bike. And I'm by no means guaranteeing that this is safe or saying that you guys should do this. Anything that I show you guys on the channel is definitely sort of use at your own risk information. I'm not an engineer, I'm not a mechanic, I just am a content creator that likes to work on dual sport motorcycles, and this is what I came up with. And initially I had wanted to get away from that, and I never wanted to do it in the first place, which is why when I ordered this kit, I ordered it for, well, actually the Husqvarna 701 Enduro, which has a chub bar or a fat bar to begin with. So it should have came with these brackets, which are made for a much larger 1 1/8 fat bar rather than a 7/8 bar like the brackets that they sent me are made for. And I was gonna try to reorient these and then use this bracket until I realized that the fat bar kit must actually come with a fatter bar here, because this is much too large to go around this and actually do any sort of clamping. So apparently I'm not gonna get any use out of these at all, and we're gonna have to be stuck with this. And actually I think the last time that I checked, whatever seller it was that was selling this kit is no longer offering them, which I think is for the best. And if you guys want a kit like this, while I've never actually tried it, I have seen a Zeta brand kit, which makes handguards and that sort of thing, that I would have to assume would be much higher quality and hopefully would actually get you the right parts. The only thing with that is they do have quite a few different listings, and a lot of the information is in either Chinese or Japanese, and I'm not fluent in that. So I can put a link for the one that I think would be best for a Japanese dual sport like this, but if you're gonna pick one up, just know that you might have to do a little bit of guess and check work when you're picking what kit you need. And I can put an affiliate link for what I think is going to work best for a Japanese dual sport, but just know if you're going to buy one of those kits, it might require a little bit of guess and check work to get the right one. But it really is kind of a neat idea, especially for the fact that you can just easily loosen up these clamps and pull the whole system off of here and then just go back to having a regular old dual sport when you're on a ride that would require that sort of setup. But of course, without a windshield on here, it's not really going to do me much good when I'm out riding in these icy cold spring temperatures, so we'll have to figure something out for that, and I think I've got an idea. So if you guys remember when I was out cruising around when it was 0 degrees last winter on the TW200, I had this Tusk universal windscreen, and I've always sort of, well, basically avoided bikes like the DR650 or the XR650 because I don't really like these sort of universal, big, almost ATV looking sort of utility windshields. But with the brackets relocated for this windshield, which actually didn't work out really at all with the handlebar and hand guard setup that I've got on this bike, because where the brackets need to go is basically right where these center clamps are, and obviously I need those to keep my hand guards on, so I've just got them relocated right to the GPS bar itself, and then I can sort of just adjust how far in or out I want that windshield. And this is essentially where I wanted that old windshield to end up. I think it just looks the best, other than the fact that this thing is so wide that to me, that doesn't really look quite right. So I think what I'm gonna do is actually cut this down a little bit on the sides to sort of make this look a little bit sleeker. I'm really pretty excited to see how this works. It's definitely a little bit odd, but I definitely like that the windshield is not so close to the CarPlay unit, and therefore my face when I'm riding off-road and going off jumps and getting way too close to that windshield. I think even in the position that I've got it, this still definitely could be a guillotine risk, but at least it's a little bit further away. But I think this is really gonna be, kind of nice, and we've got the ability to sort of tilt it up a little bit. And I think once that is trimmed down a little bit, I think it's actually going to look kind of neat on here. Certainly don't want to take too much off to begin with, since obviously it's a lot harder to put it back than it is take it off. But I think maybe something like that. Obviously, if we're going for just wind protection, it'd be much better to just leave this alone. Like I always say, I like building bikes that are just as much fun to look at as they are to ride. Well, what do you guys think? Is that going to make it look better or worse? I suppose it'll kind of depend on how steady I can hold the grinder. I think that went a little bit better than expected. I suppose that might change once I get it on the bike, but to me, at least right now, it certainly looks a lot better than it did before I cut it, so see what we think. I think that's not going to look too bad on there, but before I stick this on here, there's something I've got to fix. The other day when I was mocking this up, I didn't realize it, but I was putting little micro scratches all over in my stock headlight cowl, which was a little bit scratched up to begin with, and normally I don't mind any scratches in here, mostly because I feel like they're just part of trail riding, but that's definitely not trail riding. That's just, well, me not paying enough attention to what I'm doing. But I think I've got something that'll fix that. Ugh. I think that'll work. Oh, that's not what I expected at all. Ah! Probably way more than I needed. I suppose it does say cleaner and polish. It seems like it cleaned a little bit more than it polished, but it definitely does look a lot better than it did with all the dirty marks on it. You can still see there's a bit of scratching there, but it certainly does look a little bit better now. Wonder how that'll do cleaning up the boot marks on the side fairing here. Yeah, not quite as good a luck. However, I think this is probably actual boot material stuck on here, so maybe it's just going to take a little more elbow grease. Certainly does make it shiny. Hoping for a little more polishing action, though. Oh, actually, that's seems like a pretty deep scratch. I don't know what that's from. Oh, well, it's worth a shot, I suppose. So I'll get this thing attached, tightened down, and then we'll take this thing out for a ride and see how it works. Well, it took a little bit to grow on me. I wasn't too sure what I thought of it initially, but I've got to say I really kind of don't mind it. I might eventually kind of play with some of the lines and angles that I've got cut into it, both top and bottom. But I don't know. I mean, for a clear universal windscreen that I just slapped on a GPS bar that it was never intended to be on, it really seems like it fits on there quite well, and I don't think it looks half bad. I mean, it's certainly not as good looking as a full rally tower would be. From the back, I think it actually looks pretty good, though. I think that's probably my favorite angle. I think I like this clear windscreen on here, honestly. The look of it better than I did the dark one, and having a little bit more width to it, I think should definitely help as far as the actual purpose of it. Obviously, being able to see through it, I think, should definitely be nice as well, but I suppose we won't know how well it actually works until we get on the bike and take it for a ride. So let's fire this thing up and take it out for a rip on the road, the highway, a little bit of off-road, and see how she does. So as usual, I picked an incredibly windy day for windshield testing. And I guess you'd kind of think that would be a good thing, other than the fact that I feel like it kind of skews my perception of how much wind I'm getting, and that is one of the first things that I noticed. It definitely seems like this shield, much like the one really that I had on here before and the one on the XR, because of the sort of short height on it, you end up with a bit of turbulence kind of right where my eyeballs are, the opening of my helmet is. So if I was to open my helmet, doing, say, 50 miles an hour, I'm sure you guys can hear that I definitely get a good bit of turbulence in my face. And if I go up just a little bit higher than the buffeted area, kind of cleans it up a bit. Of course, I could always duck down just a little bit, and I tend to not like to ride hunched over because of my bad back. Man, if that was just a little bit higher, I think it'd be a lot more comfortable. Either way, though, in my normal riding position here, if I flip the visor down, that actually, I mean, feels, I think, just about as good as the last one did, maybe a little bit better, just because the profile of the shield is a little bit wider, I think, up at the top, and has a little bit wider portion just kind of down in the middle. I think I've got, I would say, a better air pocket than both the XR and what this bike was to begin with. I mean, I get just a little bit of buffeting there, and just a little bit there. And I mean, it's pretty clean air, really. I mean, up until there, I mean, it's a pretty nice pocket, honestly. Sure, it's a beautiful day for a ride. Yeah, I would say at 50, I mean, if you're somebody that buffeting, really bothers you, this isn't going to be ideal. But I think I probably could ride with my visor open if it was hot and I wanted the airflow. But especially with it closed at 50 miles an hour, I mean, this is really quite comfy. I mean, of course, you get a little bit of noise just because that buffeting is always kind of hitting your helmet, but I mean the rest of me, like I said, have a nice clean air pocket and really makes for quite the comfortable ride. Sure beats getting beat around by the wind, especially when it is a little bit chillier out. A little bit of wind protection can go a long ways on a cold day. That river is full. So I've noticed it's almost kind of hard to get down, and keep in mind your viewpoint is a couple inches below mine, but it's almost kind of hard to get down to look through the windshield even, because it is just kind of so low. But it seems like it still will be pretty nice to have the ability to do that, especially if it's raining or something, or I guess if it's really windy or really wind-driven rain, it would be nice to be able to scoot down and kind of hide down here. And there definitely is a nice viewport there just above my CarPlay unit. I think probably right about there is what I was seeing, if the camera's in the right spot, which I think it is. So definitely going to be nice to have that. Certainly going to be a lot safer and actually giving the ability to do that now that it's clear. Let's hit the big highway and see how it does out there. So 70 indicated on dash, which is probably a few miles under. I would say I'm pretty comfy. Definitely noticing that buffeting still. Maybe a little bit of pulsing. I sit up a little bit higher. Yeah, that seems a little better. My shoulders are getting a little bit of wind yet, but below my shoulders, basically, just below my shoulders, it feels pretty darn good. If I get way down, I'm still looking above the windscreen with my eyes, and I would say that actually cleans things up quite nicely. Again, I don't really love riding hunched over like this, but especially on a windy day like this, boy, that is kind of a nice reprieve from the wind. Of course, a much taller windshield would do that for you all the time, but if you like having a shorter one like this, it's not bad. It's certainly not near as comfy as the Gen 3 KLR, especially after I had the windscreen stood up on those risers, but I mean, this isn't half bad for what's basically just a big dirt bike. Yeah, I'm definitely not a fan of all the sort of buffeted wind noise that the helmet picks up when I'm sitting in this position going this fast. I don't think I would do this for very long, or want to anyways. Even in the kind of more covered areas, I'm noticing that. Definitely finding myself wanting to be down here, but it's not really a bad spot to be. I don't actually have to hunch over all that much. Personally, I definitely think that it beats riding without a windshield, especially on a colder day. Alright, now let's find out if this thing's gonna be, whoa, guillotine risk. It's definitely slippery out here. A little froze, a little thawed. Oh! Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I think, could cause a problem if I got thrown onto the bars. But I guess it does make me feel a little bit better that it's kind of farther away than the last one was. Still, I mean, anytime you're on an adventure bike or a dual sport with a windshield on it off-road, there is always that risk that you could get that right between the eyes or in the throat, and that certainly wouldn't be good. Uh-oh. Neither is climbing an icy hill. Oh, boy. We'll make it. Look at that. Woo, dragging that rear. And the big puddle. Made it. Ooh, another big puddle. Icy puddle. So I would say I'm really pretty happy with it. Like I mentioned, it's certainly not what I was intending on doing when I acquired this bike, but back then I was still working another job to help supplement the mods. And I guess I'm really not too displeased with the route that I've decided to go, testing these sort of cheaper modifications, because obviously not most people don't probably want to stick $1,000 into some flashy looking wind protection. Thanks for watching, thanks for riding along with me today, and let me know what you think of the new windshield setup on the DR. I'm pretty pleased with it. Excited to get out and test it some more. I like this bike. Should probably wash this bike off. Oh yeah, I have to hit this with the hose. Good thing it's nice enough to do that today. Catch you guys in the next one.